Okay, so try to keep your back straight if possible. That will help you to be more awake, alert. At the same time, try to make yourself relaxed, comfortable. And breathe in and out naturally, normally. Try to feel the weight of your body on the chair. Try to observe mindfully the breath as you inhale and exhale. Try to have the awareness of what you are observing. Once your mind is settled down and quiet, in the moment, in the present, and we can try to reflect and contemplate and feel how fortunate and lucky I am to have this precious human life. Which has so much potential, potential to achieve temporary happiness and ultimate happiness. And potential to achieve your own ultimate happiness and happiness of all sentient beings. Therefore, it's so fortunate to have this incredibly precious life. Not only is full of potentials, but we have free from some of the major obstacles to actualize those potentials. And have gathered all the major conducive conditions to actualize that potential. Not all beings have that kind of conditions. Not even all the human beings have the same favorable conditions like we have to actualize that potential. That understanding try to generate sense of gratitude, appreciations, and joyfulness to have such incredible, precious life. Not only so precious, so full of potentials, but this life does not last forever. For sure, the life will come to an end. And we have to face the death one day. It's definite. Even though we need to face this reality of the death, one day, we never know when that one day is. It could be in next 40, 30 years, could be in next 10 years, 5 years, could be in this year, this month, this week, or even 24, within this 24 hours. There's no guarantee that we will be in by the end of this year, or even this month, or even this week, or even in this 24 hours. Life is such a fragile, unstable. Things can happen quickly, suddenly, unexpectedly. So many people have died within these 24 hours. Suddenly, unexpected, unprepared. And we could have been one of those. But fortunately, we're still alive, giving us the time, the opportunity to prepare ourselves. Trying to opportunity to actualize those potential to a certain level, giving us the time and opportunity to practice the Dharma. Dharma is the only thing that can help us while we're alive at the time of death and after the death, nothing else. Therefore, I must use whatever time, energy, lifespan that's left to focus more on the practice of Dharma. And to practice Dharma, not just only for myself, but for the happiness and well-being of all sentient beings. Through the practice of Dharma, the more enlightened I become, the more I am able to help and benefit others. To practice the Dharma, I need to continue to learn, study, need to be reminded again and again. For that, I'm going to listen to the thoughts. Not only listen, but trying to implement and integrate in my everyday life as much as possible, whatever I find helpful and beneficial from those thoughts or teachings. All the activities of all of us coming here together, giving our precious time, energy, resources, to listen, to engage in discussion, reflecting and contemplating on the meaning of that what we have listened to. All of these become cause and conditions to actualize and fully develop the wisdom realizing emptiness and the bodhicitta mind within our mind stream and mind stream of all sentient beings. May it become cause and condition to achieve our highest potential, fully awakened state. So we can be greatest help, benefit to oneself and all other sentient beings. And may all our activities throughout the day, eating, cleaning, going to sleep, having discussions or talk, everything that we do throughout the day, walking, driving, everything we do is 24 hours, this week, this month, this year, this life. Everything that we do in all others' life until we achieve fully awakened state. may they all become cause and conditions to transform our mind, our attitude. May all of them become cause and conditions to achieve fully awakened state. Every breath we take, every moment, may all of those become cause and condition to be benefit to others and oneself, and the cause of fully enlightenment. Then we do the refuge and go to the Soki Sonam Chancho Pato Dame Katsushi Saki Shinsen Kike Sonam Ki Joba Kenche Sangye Joba Sho Sangye Chedan Soki Sonam Chancho Pato Dame Katsushi Saki Shinsen Kike Sonam Ki Joba Kenche Sangye Joba Sangye Chedan Soki Sonam Chancho Pato Dame Katsushi So, welcome everyone, and again, it's nice and lovely to see all of you. And the topic for these 3 days is going to be the Rice Seedling Sutra, and as you might have read it, and it's one very important sutras that covers important subject of dependent arising, which is the dependent arising is the very soul, not only important, but the very heart and the very soul of all the Buddha's teachings and practice. All different practices, practice or teaching related to wisdom, or practice and teaching that is related with the method. They all are very much kind of based and rooted in dependent arisings. And so again, and also as we go, you can see, also here Buddha explains, why we suffer in the samsara, what is the cause of those sufferings, to recognize the cause of sufferings and to understand why we suffer. And it has always been, topic of curiosity, understanding, discussions over the century why we suffer. on the basis of that different school of thoughts, spiritual path, or materialistic world, everyone is trying to understand and trying to come with why we suffer, what is the cause of those sufferings. And Buddhism also try to, answer that questions that we have, why we suffer and what is the cause of suffering. And not only it, and the Buddha also not only mentioned that, then he also mentions, that not only there is suffering and the cause of sufferings, but also there is a cessation to the suffering, that we don't have to continue to suffer. It's not that we need to suffer endlessly. There is an end to suffering. There's a cessation, an end to suffering, if we make the effort to do that. And there is the path that can end the suffering permanently, by overcoming the root of the sufferings permanently. Not just a temporary relief, which we find time to time. We find temporary relief from certain pain, certain suffering, time to time, but again, we kind of face similar or another pain, suffering, problems, and so it's never end. Even though we find temporary relief, but again, even that Buddha said, not only we can have temporary relief, but we can have permanent relief, that the suffering can be overcome permanently by overcoming the cause of those suffering permanently. And thereby, that is not that we have to suffer and experience pain endlessly. If we make the choice and effort to end the suffering. And so here Buddha also covered that subject, the 12 links and reversing the 12 links, and thereby, finding the cessations. Okay, so I think that is the main topic of this sutta. And, 4 with all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So that is 4 is not really part of that actual sutta, is a 4 by the translators, when they translate at the very beginning. And then the actual sutra starts, Thus, I've heard it one time, and I think as you can see, all the sutras start with that. And because, again, it wasn't written by Buddha himself. Even the Buddha's time, it was written much more later. And as you can see, it's not even direct from the Buddha at that time. It's a recollection of someone. After Buddha passed away, then the disciple felt the need to preserve all the Buddha's teachings, wisdom, because our teachers no more there, so how can we preserve them? How can we preserve all the incredible knowledge, wisdom, teachings that Buddha gave? And then, with the first Buddhist council after Buddha's passing away, the gathering of the 500 arhats. So it's not only just gathering of the Buddha's disciples, but actually all of them who are part of those first Buddhist council were recollecting what they had heard. It's all of them arhat, 500. And of course, there's a lot of stories, but I don't want to go in all of that. And Ananda was one of those Buddha's cousins and his attendant for last 25 years, always with Buddha. And Ananda was one of those who was recollecting of different disciples, or among those 500 arhat, different disciples were recollecting what they have heard. And then all other 500 who are there, they listen, whether that's also what they heard. Is it the same or not? And through that kind of agreements of those 500 arhat who were listening, and then with that, and so that is how at the very beginning kind of passed orally, and then later it was written. So that is where, and of course, there might be according to okay. I said it one time here, so Ananda recollecting that the Bhagwan of the Buddha was residing on a Vulture Peak mountain in Radha. So it is the same place where we get the Park Sutra. Same place is the Vulture Peak. Just a little bit outside of this Radha, the big city at one time. And in the audience, with a large sangha of 1,250 bhikshus, So those are the monks, fully ordained monks. His followers, many of them are, and then many bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, and not only in the audience, there was only the, ordained one, but also there were lay practitioners, and among, again, those lay practitioners, also there were many great bodhisattvas among them who were in the audience. At that time, the Venerable Shatiputras went to the place frequented by the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva material. So each of Buddha's disciples had their unique qualities, both among the arhats and also among the bodhisattvas, known for their kind of special qualities. Ananda is known for his incredible memory. Ananda is known for his incredible memory. That is one of his kind of unique qualities among disciples. Shariputra is known for his wisdom. Mongoliana known for his psychic powers. So each of those disciples have their own. They all are arhat, but they have also their unique kind of qualities. And So here, Shariputra, one of Buddha's main disciples, Mongoliana and Shariputra's, so Shariputra, just like in the Heart Sutra, here is again the Shariputra who is asking the questions. And the Bodhisattva who is giving the answer in Heart Sutra is Avalokiteshvara. Here is the material, both of them material. And just like Avalokiteshvara, material, Manjushri, all of them, sometimes they manifest in the form of bodhisattvas, and so here I said bodhisattvas, the Buddha of loving kindness. So bodhisattva. And after exchanging courtesy, between the Shariputra and Bodhisattva, Mahasatva, material, upon meeting each other, they both sat down on the flat rock. So up to here, it describes that kind of it's like a prologue, describing the introduction, a little bit of the background. Then the actual kind of sutta starts, the discussions between Shariputra and Bodhisattva and material. Yeah. Venerable, I'm traditionally, each word they have a detailed meanings, I'm not going to go into, the excellent teacher, excellent place, excellent time, excellent organs, why is for, water mountains, what does gear, why is Shariputra for Shariputra, all of that. I don't want to go in all of that. Okay, try to keep it a little more simple. So then, Venerable Shariputra, then said to the poster master from Maitreya, so he's saying today, the Bhagavan, also, this, what does the Bhagavan means, again, I'm not going to go in all of that, the Bhagavan, the Buddha, gazing at the rice seedling, spoke this aphorism. How you say? Aphorism. To the bhikshus, who are in the audience. So what Buddha said was, concise, teaching of the principle was bhikshus. Whoever sees dependent arising sees the Dharma, and whoever sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. And you see these quotations in many others commentaries and teachings, that from these sutras. Probably you might have seen in some others teachings, commentaries, this particular statement in these sutras. Having said this, the Bhagavan fell silent. So Buddha didn't give directly much explanations on that. So Shariputra, and so Shariputra asked him, Maitreya, what is the meaning of this aphorism spoken by the Sukata? What is dependent arising? One questions. Because Buddha said, whoever is dependent arising, see the Dharma. And so then, what is the Dharma? Second question. And also Buddha said, whoever see the Dharma will see the Buddha. So then what is the meaning of the Buddha. So with three cautions. And how does one see Dharma? By seeing dependent arising, the fourth cautions. And how does one see the Buddha? By seeing the Dharma. So 5 cautions in general. And so it is about answering those 5 cautions. The whole Buddha is on that. And again, just like Heart Sutra, here, saying we understand a lot of those discussions here in Heart Sutra is between the Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara. Bodhisattva Avalok here is between Shariputra and Bodhisattva Mahasattva Maitreya. Their discussions was blessed and inspired by the Buddha. Even the Buddha didn't actually say those directly from him, but it was coming from his side. So he blessed them and inspired them to engage in these discussions. So to all the answers Shariputra asked, then the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Maitreya then replied to the Venerable Shariputra. Venerable Shariputra, with regard to the what is dependent arising, is in the statement made by the Bhagavan, the Lord of the Dharma, the Omniscient One. Bhikshu, whoever sees dependent arising, sees the Dharma. Whoever sees the Dharma, sees the Buddha. Well, the phrase dependent arising means that something arises because something else already exists. Something is born because something else has already born. So again, this statement also you find very often quoted in many different teachings, for slightly different translations, Something exists because this exists. Something is produced because this is produced. Or this is produced because of that. This exists because of that. Or because of that existence. So basically, what he is saying is something arises or something is being produced because there is the cause or the conditions that is already existed or preceding cause and conditions. Because of that preceding cause and conditions, then this result is produced. This result arises from that cause and condition which already existed before the result. So that is what it means, So therefore there is a result because there is preceding cause and condition of that result which has already existed. So therefore, whatever result, whether it's external or internal world, condition phenomena, or internal world of our experiences. Different experiences that we experience as a human beings, as a sentient beings. Pleasant, joyful experiences, or unpleasant, painful experiences, or neutral experiences, different kinds of experiences that we experience in our life. The result, such experiences are result of specific particular cause and conditions. And because of those particular cause and conditions, therefore we have specific more experiences. The result. just like the external world. You know, there's specific flower with specific color, patterns, size, whatever, because there's a very specific cause for that, cause and conditions. And why is that particular shape? Why is that color? Is that pattern? Each of them has specific cause and condition to produce that. That is why nowadays, why we have genetically modified plants, fruits, vegetables, everything. They understand, why these have this particular shape. They recognize, they identify the cause for that. They identify particular shape, the particular cause for that particular shape, and particular size for that particular. And so therefore then they can genetically modify to have exactly same size, same color, same, same size, same shape, and so forth. Or if they want to mix to create new ones by mixing those different cores, and then thereby modifying. They are able to do that because they recognize each of those has specific cause and conditions. Because they were able to identify and then put those together. So it is not only in external world, it's the same in our internal world of our experiences. And why we suffer. Different level of different kind of suffering, different kind of pain. Why we experience that? There are very specific cause for that. And same with different level of joy, different level of happiness, different kind of happiness, different kind of joy. They have specific cause and conditions. And so that's it, therefore, all these condition phenomena, whether it's external or internal world, or external and internal condition phenomena, they all are dependent arising because they all depend on preceding cause and conditions. So in such, then, when we understand dependent arising correctly in that way, then there's no kind of random, it doesn't happen, such something just doesn't happen without specific cause and condition. Everything that happens has a specific cause and conditions. And I think that is because of that, if we can identify exact cause and condition, then that allow us to fix that. And that is how we are able to fix a lot of external problems when the science are able to identify exact cause and conditions that lead to that particular problem. And when they try to change that cause condition that specifically lead to that particular condition, they are able to change the result, the conditions. And that is same when we are able to identify exact cause and condition for our experiences, pleasant, unpleasant experiences, and then we can fix that. The suffering, the pain we do not want, we can get rid of them by getting rid of the cause and condition that lead to that state. And we can improve and increase the level of our happiness and joy by identifying what the cause and condition and by cultivating those cause and conditions. So, of course, it will become more detailed later. First Buddha used the external dependent arising as an example because that is something we all can see with our naked eye and we can understand. And then by using that dependent arising of the external world as an example, then he also explained how that same work for the internal world of our experiences, which some of them is hard for us to because it's not something we can see with our naked eyes. Same consciousness is something that needs to be understood with the mental consciousness, and sometimes, and so therefore he used something more easy to understand. And then by using that example, then he tried to explain, which is a little bit more difficult for us to understand. And so in here first he starts with the internal conditions or internal dependent arising. Here, when it's explained in a, briefly without going so much details, and when it go in detail, then that it will come more. And so in terms of internal world, that is to say, ignorance causes formations. So here is saying, due to our fundamental ignorance, then one of those affective emotions arises. Whether it's attachment, whether it's anger, whether it's jealousy, whether it's pride, different affective emotion arises. And due to those different affective emotions, then we engage into actions. We engage into actions and create that karmic seed of karmic formations or karmic seeds. Okay? We create that karmic seed or karmic formations through our actions by any of the door, body, speech, and mind. And we engage in such actions caused by the ignorance. If there's, okay. So the ignorance caused the formations or the karmic formation or the karmic seeds, and those karmic seeds, the result is caused by the ignorance, which is the cause. And formations, karmic formation, cause the consciousness. So here Buddha is explaining the 12 links. So then once you create the karmic seed or potential karmic formations, then this karmic seed is planted in your mental state or consciousness. And that consciousness that carry that karmic seed is the third link. Are we clear here? Yeah. So first there's ignoring, then due to that ignorance, you engage into action. Having engaged in that action, you create karmic seed or potential. Second, karmic formations. And once you have created that karmic seed and potential, that karmic seed and potential is kind of planted in your mental consciousness. And that consciousness that is carrying that mental, that karmic seed is the third link. So that is called, because of that, then formation called consciousness. Consciousness called name and form. And that karmic seed, the consciousness that is carrying that karmic seed, is later activated. Okay, the karmic seed is activated. Through activation of that karmic seed, then you have a new rebirth, of conceptions for the new rebirth. And when you have that conceptions, then you have this name and form, that fourth link. The form refers to the physical body form, and the name refers to the other mental aggregates, such as feeling, consciousness, discriminating, the feeling, discriminating mind, compositional factor of mind and consciousness. Those are part of when you say name and the form. The form, so basically name and form refer to the five aggregates. The form refer to the physical aggregate, and the name refer to the mental aggregates, the rest of the four aggregates. And the name and form cause the six sense sources. At the time of conceptions, when the sperm and eggs come together, so then whatever embryo or whatever physical form that become the form, and then with that there's the other aggregate, that's the name, and then after that it come together, then slowly your body started to develop, and then the six senses started to develop with days, weeks, and months, and so that development of those six sense sources come through that name and the form, The five sense sources develop mainly from the form, physical form, and then the mental sense sources develop mainly from the name, the five mental aggregates, And of course, we will go more, and I think also it will come more later, And the six sense sources cause conduct. So that is the name and the form is the fourth and sixth sense source of the fifth link, and the sixth link, the conduct. So consciousness is already there at the time of name and form, okay? The objects of the consciousness already developed. The form, the shape, color, sound, all are there. But in order to the consciousness to perceive the objects, it depends on the sense sources or sense faculties. Without the sense faculty, the consciousness is unable to perceive the objects. The sixth sense faculty or sources act as the bridge between the consciousness and the objects. It's like you are using microscope to perceive very small objects, because you cannot see with your naked eyes without using that. And so it is like that. It's like a microscope that helps your consciousness to perceive the objects, you know. And when you perceive the objects, then, you know, you coming together, then your consciousness come in contact with the objects, you know. Before, you know, without the sixth sense faculties or sources, your consciousness is unable to come in contact with the object and therefore not being able to perceive. Now you are able to come into contact that. So that sixth sense sources or faculty calls to have contact, your consciousness to have contact with the object and perceive it, you know. And that's where the sixth sense sources cause contact. Contact causes sensations. And then once your consciousness, your mind is able to come in contact with the objects by depending on the senses, faculties, or sources, then, you know, you have sensation or feelings. Sensation and feelings. And different feeling or different sensations depending on how your mind interpret the objects when you come in contact, you know. When your mind come in contact with the objects, having come with contact with the object, then your mind saw this object is nice, beautiful, attractive, or bad, negative, you know, whatever, or so, you know, depending on that, then different feeling arises, you know. You come into contact, your conscious coming this object, and your having come that, then we identify this object as a negative, and then aversion, dislike arises. The feeling of aversion, dislike, you know, and other different negative feelings arises. Or when it comes in contact with the object, our mind perceive or identify or try to interpret it as something nice, good, meaningful, beneficial, then different sensation, different feeling, feeling of liking, feeling of wanting, a nice feeling in relation to that object, pleasant feeling arises instead of unpleasant feelings. And when our mind, you know, interpret that object as more neutral, you know, neither attractive, good, neither bad, at least, so, then we have different feeling, more neutral feelings, neither pleasant feeling, neither unpleasant feeling, you know. So just those different feelings or sensation here as is translated arises from coming into contact with the objects and then how we interpret that object. You know, how our mind interprets that object. Sensations cause craving. So that is the eighth link. So when we come into contact with a certain object and our mind interprets it as a nice, something beautiful, something attractive, something desirable, something useful, something meaningful, you know, then we have a nice feeling in relation to that objects, you know. And when we have a nice feeling in relation to that object, pleasant feeling, nice feeling, then we have craving. We have craving for that feeling, as well as craving for object that give that kind of feeling. You know, oh, I like this feeling because it's a pleasant feeling, it's a nice feeling. I want to have repeat that feeling. I want to continue to have that feeling. And then also, whatever object we feel that is giving to that feeling, then we also get craving for that object. If we want to have that object to repeat that feeling or to continue to have that feeling, the pleasant feeling, nice feeling. And that's where craving comes from. Hmm? And craving causes appropriations. Normally, in most other translations, it will be grasping, how it is translated. And I was trying to appropriation. I don't know. So I was trying to see the definition. I was having a hard time to relate with the grasping.
Appropriation, in one way, it's a good word, because if I appropriate something, I make it mine.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. So at the very beginning, the attachment or desire craving, and when we don't apply antidotes, and when we are unable to reduce or destroy that, then slowly it becomes more intensified, more stronger and stronger. Of course, if you try to apply something, it can be less, but when we don't apply antidote, the method, and then that craving become more stronger and stronger, and more intense. And that is what it leads to appropriations or the grasping, when it becomes very strong, very intense. Mm. And then that appropriation or grasping causes becoming the 10th. So appropriation, the 9th link. And then 10th link is the becoming. And so then, with that craving and appropriations or the grasping, then it activates the karmic seed fully. And when that karmic seed is fully ripened in terms of ripening karma to produce another rebirth, so now it is ready to produce a rebirth at that next moment. And that's what becoming is. All the cause and conditions have all come together. Now is nothing, almost nothing can stop from producing the rebirth now. Not only there was karmic seed, the karmic formation, but not that karmic formations had been karmic seed within your consciousness has been now activated by giving water and fertilizer and the heat and everything that need. And next moment is like you are waiting, next moment the sprout will just pop up. Everything is come together to give the sprout just in moment. The very next moment. Similarly, that is what become, when all the conditions have come together and ready to produce. And with that becoming cause the birth. So that is the 11, And when all these cause and conditions have come together, then the very next is the rebirth. That's what it gives the birth. And again, birth doesn't here necessarily always mean coming out of the mother's womb. The very moment conceptions happen, that is the birth also. So in a way, the birth and name and form at the same time becoming simultaneously, if you say, if you want to be more precise, that's when the birth. And the birth causes aging and death. And after the very moment you have birth, then aging starts. Aging starts from the very moment of the birth. Again, aging doesn't mean that we all become white, lose our hair, wrinkles, and all. Very moment you have the birth, from that very moment, the aging have started. Normally, we try to use different way. We say, oh, it's developing. It's another way of putting. From that birth, you started to develop. Another way of putting is you have started to age.
Closer to dying.
Yeah. And then, the birth cause aging, and then slowly, death, your life comes to end. Your life comes to end right after the birth. Could come at the right after the birth, or after a few months, few years, or after many years. At young age, as a child, teenager, adult, and slowly, I don't know what are the next, and then, the death could come any of those moments, but finally we all had to face that death. So, welcome. So we are at the page number 2 with the birth, cause, aging, and death. And after the death, we have grief, sorrow, the death of others, loved ones, dear ones, near ones. And of sorrow, grief. And then, when that mental sorrow, grief is unbearable, then it comes in the form of speech, limitations, and then, sufferings, loss of the suffering, such as loss of feeling of lost, and many others feeling could arise when we are going through loss of someone that's close and dear in our life, many different mental states, emotions, feelings that are very painful, unhappiness, distress, and again, through such different state of pain, sufferings, on the emotional, mental level, then it can have a distress and also effect on our physical well-being as well. When we're mentally stressed out, so not only it has mental effect, but also it has a physical negative impact. And the disturbance, turmoil, in our mind, mental disturbance, turmoil of all different kind of feelings, it can lead to a lot of different feelings in terms of that mental turmoil, can lead to anger, resentment, fear, could lead to feeling of regret, guilt, could lead to self-disgusting, self-loathing, self-hatred, because maybe we sometimes blame ourselves, sometimes we blame ourselves for the loss of someone in our life, or not only loss, sometimes the way they die, and sometimes we can be very harsh on ourselves and blaming everything on ourselves, and that could lead to again many other mental turmoils and pain and suffering. So again, all this. So we experience so much pain, all of that. Does this entire great heap of suffering arises? So all those different type of mental disturbance, mental turmoil, distress, pain, suffering, all this. Sometimes all those emotions kind of pouring in one time at the same time, going through so much, all those different emotions, feelings within very short times, And then, not only we suffer and not only we experience the pain on mental, emotional level because of all of that, but again, it can have a strong effect on our physical well-being as well. When we are stressed mentally and when there's kind of turmoil, we don't take care of ourselves well, we're unable to take care of ourselves well. We are unable to manage ourselves well because your mind is in that state. You are not in clear state of mind. Your mind is too much confusions and all these different states. So sometimes we don't know or not, we don't really take care of ourselves well or our well things. And then, our physically also it can deteriorate and have a lot of effect of that, affected by the mental state and suffering. And in that way, then we, suffer a lot of pain and suffering. So that is kind of the explanations of, if we can say, evolution of the sufferings. Basically is explaining, why we suffer. Why do we suffer from death, from aging, sickness, and all other sufferings that comes between the birth and death, between the death and birth, we go through so much conflict, problem, pain, and suffering in so many different way or in different things. Why do we have to go through all of that? Why is that? So basically here, because of such samsaric birth. As long as we are samsaric birth, as long as we have the birth, that's a result of contaminated actions and the delusions. As long as we are such birth, you cannot escape sickness, aging, death, and all other sufferings that come because of sickness, because of aging, because of death. Isn't it? When you have sickness, of course, we are dealing with physical discomfort, pain. Same with aging, and I'm joining that club, and I'm starting to feel a little bit of that, um, it, when you are young, when you feel healthy, it's hard to relate those teachings so strongly. Maybe you think maybe not everyone goes through that. Maybe some people, you know. But once you reach certain age, and when you join that club, then you started to see, uh, you are nobody's exception. Of course, there could be slightly different levels. Some have little more challenging, others have little bit less challenging relatively, but everyone go through the same and similar challenges. So it's the aging, and we all have to face that. All that we cannot escape. Why we need to die? And there's always cautions. Why we need to be sick? Why we to suffer? Why we face death? Why we face aging? Why our bodies need to be aged? Why we have to age? Why we get sick? And all other stuff. Because this very body and other aggregates, both physical and mental aggregates, because they are result of contaminated actions and the delusions. That's why. That's why, because of such a rebirth. Until we stop such birth, we will continue to experience that. The way to free from all of that is to stop such birth. How can we stop such birth? Of course, if you go through the two link, then you have to stop becoming, then you have to stop grasping cravings, and back to ignorance, which will come, So that is. So next one is, explaining how to get out of that, out of the suffering, free from suffering. When the ignorance ceases, when we are able to overcome the ignorance by cultivating the wisdom, realizing the emptiness, dependent arisings, that can act as a direct antidote or counter force, remedy towards that ignorance. When that ignorance completely kind of destroyed, then there is no more other afflictive emotion arising because of the ignorance. When there is no more afflictive emotion arising, then there is no more action created due to the motivated by those one of afflictive emotions. And so therefore there's no more creating of not only negative karma, but also positive contaminated karma. At the moment, even when we are not creating a negative karma, even when we are creating a positive karma, it still is contaminated. And therefore, it becomes cause to a better situation within the samsara, but it doesn't act as a cause to free from the samsara. That kind of virtuous action, that kind of virtuous karma help us to have better conditions within the samsara, but it doesn't really help us to free from the samsara. Because even those virtuous actions are indirectly kind of influenced by that fundamental ignorance. Because we are not free from that ignorance, So, but when the ignorance is destroyed and ceased, then such karmic formations is ceased. And when karmic formations is ceased, when there's no more that, then there's no more consciousness that carry that karmic seed, consciousness cease. And when that consciousness that is carrying the karmic seed cease, then there is no more result of such karmic seed in the form of name and form. And that kind of the aggregates contaminated aggregates of name and form, when there's no more of that, when it ceases, form cease, then there's no more the six sense sources. So the six sense sources cease. When the six sense sources cease, there's no more contact from the object to the consciousness to the objects. And when there's no more contact with the objects, the contact ceases, then, there's no feeling or sensation arising because of the consciousness being in contact with the objects. And when there's no more sensations or feeling, when that ceases, then there's no more craving because of, pleasant feelings, because there's no more such feelings. And when there's no more craving, then there's no more increasing and intensifying of that craving, and therefore there's appropriation cease. And then when there is no more appropriations, when it ceases, then becoming cease. When there's no more craving and appropriation that activate the karmic seed, then there's no more becoming cease. And when there is no more becoming, when the becoming cease, then there is no more samsaric birth, and the samsaric birth cease. And when there is no more samsaric birth, when the birth ceases, then there is no more aging and death because of the samsaric birth. And if there's no more aging and death, then there's no more sorrow, limitations, suffering, unhappiness, distress, and disturbance, tumulence cease, then all others. Mental negative emotions that we experience because of sickness, aging, and death, and because of loss, and with many different things, then we don't have to suffer all this mental anguish, mental distress, mental disturbance, and turmoil. And when there is no more such mental anguish, disturbance, turmoil, distress, and so forth, when there's more peace in your mind, more calm, peace, tranquilities. And when there is more peace, tranquility, calmness, you find more joy and happiness in your life and everything. You can find joy and happiness in everything, every moment. You can find joy and happiness in everything, in every moment. You find a joy and happiness in another being. You find a joy and happiness to see you are alive. You find a joy and happiness that you are not dead. You find a joy and happiness even when you are not feeling so well. Still, at least, it could be worse, and it's not as bad. You find a joy that you are able to breathe. Find joy in everything, and then it gives you more joy, happiness in your life. And with that kind of joy, happiness, more peace, tranquility, it will also affect your physical well-being as well. Not only emotional, mental well-being, it will also help for your better physical well-being, because again, there's enough sometimes we know with our own experience a little bit, and sometimes we are not aware with our own experience. There's enough research to show how our different mental states affect our physical well-being. You know. When our mind is distressed, when our mind is in distress, turmoil, and anguish and so forth, due to different emotions, it affects your level of, blood, sugar level, blood pressures, all of that. I have a friends who had blood pressure, and of course, they try to measure time to time, and they can see how it goes up when they are not feeling, or their mind is disturbed by something. When their mind is, not calm, peaceful, because their mind has been disturbed by something, and they just go up. Same with the sugar level. One of my brother had, yeah, that, and we were trying to measure with this now new, sensors. Yeah, last year he asked me to bring that, and then, we can see when it goes up and down and what effect that, normally is normal in the morning, when you get up, then after when you eat, and that goes up. And of course, also depending on what you eat, how high it goes also. And then you can see when you take a walk and something, it started to come down. And in one morning, we checked, and it was very high, very morning. And I said, normally yours is normal, when you in the very early mornings. Why is that so high today? And because he was stressed out.
Mhm.
He haven't eaten, he haven't started breakfast, anything, but it has gone very high. Because he got a message, there was a fire in house. And then, so that he had to get up, trying to find out what was happening and extinguish. And that, of course, there's stress, where the fear, stress, and that has made it go very up. So these are very clear how our mind, state of mind, affect our physical well-being. So not only we need, a practice meditations, to reduce and overcome those negative emotions, those disturbing emotions, for our emotional mental health, but we also need for our also physical well-being, physical health, for both physical and emotional mental health. We need to learn those different meditations to have to, yeah, quiet, reduce and overcome those disturbing emotions. And of course, there's no way out of the samsara without overcoming them. There's no way to achieve liberation, nirvana without that. There's no way to achieve fully enlightenment without that. So we need to reduce and overcome for temporary well-beings while in the samsara, as well as to free from the samsara and to achieve permanent happiness of liberation, as well as to achieve our highest potentials, fully enlightened, so that we can be not only we can have our own peace and true happiness, but that we can also help others to find their true peace and ultimate happiness. Thus, this entire great heap of suffering cease. So, so when the ignorance is ceased, then all these heaps of all these sufferings is ceased. And when all the suffering are ceased by destroying the root of all the sufferings, then you find true lasting, true happiness. No more fluctuating, no more up and down, But the peace, the happiness you find is always lasting, always there. This is what the Buddha has called dependent arising. The Bhagavan has called dependent arising. So, having explained what is dependent arising, because it is meant, as the caution was, or as Buddha said, whoever sees the dependent arising sees the Dharma. So then next one, then what is the Dharma? So then what is the Dharma? The next. And answering that, the Dharma is the eightfold path of noble ones. And eightfold noble path, when you kind of summarize content, then it can be summarized content in three higher training. The higher training of moral discipline, the training of, and the higher training of meditative concentration, and the higher training of the wisdom. In most of the Mahayana's teachings, they tend to present more from these three higher training. In traditions that follow more Pali tradition, they tend to present more from eightfold path. But basically, same. So again, I think it might come later. So what are those eightfold paths? The right view, right thought, which are part of the wisdom, right speech, right actions, end of actions, right actions, or right speech, right action, right livelihood. Those are part of the moral discipline, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentrations are part of the mental concentrations. This eightfold. So the right view, is the correct view as it is, as the reality is. So that means, the right view of law of cause and effect, the right view of Four Noble Truths, the right view of all conditioned phenomena are what we call four things, all the conditioned phenomena impermanent, all the contaminated experience are suffering, all the phenomena are setlessness, and nirvana is peaceful. So, the right view of dependent arising, the right view of emptiness, so that is the right view, sometimes you see this term mundane right view and non-mundane right view. In mundane right view, sometimes it is the view of law of cause and effect. It's known as the mundane right view. And the view of how everything is empty of inherent existence is then, the ultimate view of the view beyond mundane. So sometimes you can see those terms, some pictures of that. So anyway, those are the right view. Right thought, is the intention, the thought, the right intention, right thought to help and benefit others, to bring that right view to others, helping them to understand the right view, with that right intentions to be help benefit to others and to help them to understand the right view, with that kind of right thought, right intentions, then we engage into, every door to help others through body, speech, and mind. And that kind of right thought or intention is the right thought, Mm. So, and right speech, um, are the speech that refrain from the four wrong speech, or negative speech, such as lying, engaging into, harsh speech, divisive speech, meaningless, idle speech. So we try to refrain from such speech, and we try to engage in a speech that is helpful and beneficial to others and oneself. Instead of engaging those harmful speech, we try to engage in speech that are helpful and beneficial for others and oneself, which are being, instead of lying, being truthful in terms of your speech. In terms of harsh speech, trying to be more gentle, kind speech. In terms of divisive speech, trying to engage in a speech that unite, that bring together, not divide. And we have to be mindful of our speech. Sometimes even we might not have the intentions to create disharmony and divide, but we are not mindful of our speech. And from what we say, then other people understand something else. They interpret in certain way, then that become divisive speech. And that can create divisions and disharmony in the family, in the organizations, in the world that we live in. And by that kind of disharmony and divisions, everyone suffers. There's no one exception who doesn't suffer from that kind of disharmony and exceptions. So those are the right speech, and then engage instead of engaging in meaningless, speech, which is speech that only increase delusions. We talk for something that increase, attachments. We talk about something that increase anger. We talk about something that increase the ignorance. We talk about something that only increase our pride, and so forth, or others' pride, our pride. Meaningful speech is something that it doesn't increase those afflictive emotions, or but instead, speech that can even reduce them, or if not reduce, at least doesn't increase that. Those are the kind of the. So this is the right speech. Right actions, is refraining from taking the life of others, stealing, engaging in sexual misconduct, and engaging in the, instead of taking the life of others, saving the life of others, protecting the life of others, instead of stealing, engage in a practice of generosity, offering generosity. Instead of engaging in sexual misconduct, being truthful, faithful, so that is the kind of right actions, right livelihood, There are 5 wrong livelihood, and refraining from them, in terms of ordained ones are slightly different and lay practitioners, and again, normally, some of the wrong livelihood are, that we make livelihood which directly hurts and harm others, such as taking livelihood by engaging in, that make weapons that, that kills others, or engaging in a kind of livelihood by engaging in, human trafficking or human business, in that, or engage in a livelihood that, such as killing the animals, for the products of defending, taking the lives of others, defending, or livelihood in which contributes for such as creating poisons, again. So as much as possible, trying to not to contribute and not to make livelihood from such as much as possible, but trying to make livelihood that doesn't bring destructions and suffering to others, but actually which can help to reduce the suffering of others and increase the well-being of others through such livelihood, So those are the right livelihood. And as I mentioned, those are the part of the moral discipline, the practice of moral discipline. The right view, right thought, the part of the in terms of the wisdom, and the right effort, right effort is the making the effort to engage in something virtuous, not a negative. A lot of time we put effort in negativities, we put a lot of effort to engage in unwholesome actions. And so trying to refrain from that and instead putting our effort, for to make effort not to arise of any of, non-virtuous thoughts, and actions. And whatever non-virtuous thought or action that has been already arise, create, trying to minimize them, making all the effort. First, making effort not to arising them. Okay. But even having putting effort, sometimes the delusion is so strong, the negative emotion is so strong, sometimes it arises. When it arises, then making all the effort so that it doesn't increase and become intensify, become strong, but trying effort to decrease them as much as possible. You know. And whatever virtues, all the virtues that we have not been able to accomplish, making all the effort to accomplish those virtues. And whatever virtues we have already accomplished, making all the effort to increase and improve them. And that is the right effort. The right effort is to making all the effort for not arising of the non-virtues, and whatever has arisen not to increase and improve it, and putting the effort to cultivate all the virtues that you have not already cultivated, and whatever virtue you have already cultivated to increase and improve, you put effort. So that is the right effort, you know, right mindfulness, you know. Again, you know, that mindfulness is, again, you know, being mindful of, you know, your body, your feelings, your mind, and all phenomena. You know, and the practice that you learn, you know, to be mindful and aware of whatever's happening with your bodies, whatever's happening with your feelings, whatever's happening with your mind, what is happening with phenomena around you, you know, but learning to simply observe and be aware without involving, without being too judgmental. You know. And with such right effort and such right mindfulness, then it helps to develop the right concentrations. You know, when you have strong practice of right mindfulness and right effort, then those two can help us to develop a very strong meditative concentrations, the right concentrations. And the right concentrations are the, you know, for 6 level of concentrations or samadhi, you know, and especially they say, you know, especially the fourth one is more balanced among the samadhi. So then that is the right concentration. And this eightfold path of the noble ones, and those noble ones are the ones who sees this Eight Noble Path directly, the Arya beings, you know, who sees as they are exactly and directly. And those are the Arya or the noble ones, you know, whereas we are unable to see as they are, you know, and combined with attainment is result in nirvana, you know, by engaging in such Dharma of the Eighth Noble Path, then you achieve, the final result of such practice, which is the nirvana, the cessation. And that path and the result, cessation, is what the Bhagavan has called the Dharma. So the actual Dharma is the path, and the result of that path, the cessations. And of course, within the cessation, there can be, three different levels. The cessation of period arhat, the cessation of fully realizing arhat, and the cessation of the bodhisattvas, the fully enlightened, non-abiding nirvana, Or within the nirvana of arhat, there is nirvana with reminder and nirvana without non-reminder, and then non-abiding nirvana, which is the fully enlightenment. So since it is said, if you see dependent arising, you will see Dharma. So it explains what dependent arising, what Dharma is. And since Buddha also, whoever sees the Dharma will see the Buddha. So then, who is the Bhagavan Buddha? And so a Buddha, so-called Buddha, is called Buddha or awakening one, fully awakened one, because of comprehending all dharmas, everything that needs to be known, every object of knowledge, every object of knowledge, all dharma, is endowed with the wisdom eyes of noble ones who comprehend, who understand all the object of knowledge or all the dharmas and the bodies of dharma. So, I think it is explaining about the Dharmakaya and Rupakaya body. Buddha is someone who has achieved, the Dharmakaya and the Rupakaya, the two bodies. So the wisdom eye for noble one is the Dharmakaya, the wisdom Dharmakaya. And the body of Dharma is the Rupakaya, And so Dharmakaya with Dharmakaya, you are fulfill your own highest purpose and well-being. And through the Rupakaya, then you fulfill the well-being of other sentient beings. So you need the Rupakaya Dharma in order to help benefit, because the sentient beings cannot comprehend and understand the Dharmakaya wisdom directly. And so therefore, through the Rupakaya, through that kind of manifestations of physical aspects such as Sambhogakaya, Nirvanakaya form, and then through that, then the Buddha showed the path, guide, and the sentient beings and help them to live their ultimate happiness. And so that, and thus precede the Dharma of all those still in training and those beyond training, So everything there is, any things that need to be received, understood everything, and all knowing or omniscience, or all knowing. So that is, so yeah. And then it comes the next questions, because there were 5 questions at the beginning. So with that, both of Mahasattva answered first 3 questions to the first 3 questions, and then there is 2 more questions that you will continue to answer that.